What transpires when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses enters what she thinks will be a lighthearted late-night interview, only to discover the host has a completely other plan? What if that interview goes dark, crossing professional lines and catching her off guard on live television? Tonight, we're uncovering the shocking confrontation that rocked the entertainment world. The moment Julia Roberts went head-to-head with Jimmy Kimmel in a segment that was supposed to be charming and routine, but quickly devolved into chaos. Buckle up. This wasn't just another press junket gone wrong. This was a collision of two powerful personalities, and it ended with one of Hollywood's biggest names storming off set. Before we get started, subscribe and hit that notification bell and leave a comment below. Because let me tell you, what went down behind the scenes may just change the way you look at celebrity interviews for good. Backstage on Jimmy Kimmel Live, there was its typical harnessed chaos. The green room hummed with subdued swagger. Julia Roberts sat comfortably in her seat, thumb absent-mindedly scrolling through her phone as her publicist Sarah wrapped up paperwork with the show's staff. This was familiar ground to Julia. She had made hundreds of late-night appearances over the years. Plug the movie, joke around a bit, charm the crowd, and perhaps share a humorous anecdote about her kids or husband. It had been a formula for success, and tonight was no exception. 5 minutes, Miss Roberts, the production assistant called out, clipboard grasped in her hand. Julia smiled warmly and sipped her herbal tea. Sarah leaned in close, voice lowered. Don't forget the talking points, she reminded her. The rom-com, your co-stars, the charity project. Friendly, light bite. Julia smiled. Easy does it, Sarah. It's Jimmy Kimmel, not a Senate inquiry. I've been doing this since before he had a late-night slot. But what Julia didn't know was that Jimmy had spent the afternoon in a very different headspace. Upstairs in his office, Jimmy Kimmel wasn't rehearsing light jokes or preparing for a smooth, celebrity-friendly segment. Instead, he sat slumped over a messy desk with his writing team, browsing celebrity scandal blogs and deteriorated tabloid layouts. He was sick of it, done with phony laughter, insincere compliments, and film shills masquerading as interviews. It's always the same, Jimmy grumbled. They show up, pitch their film, spin a sweet tale. It's like sitting through an ad. His head writer an eyebrow. They're actors, Jimmy. They're here to hype, not to be grilled. Jimmy slouched back, his eyes sparkling with guile. But what if we gave the people what they really want? What if we punched through the slick PR facade and actually put the questions to them that make them squirm? And just like that, a new type of segment was created, one Julia Roberts hadn't known she was about to step into. Want to watch what happens when the Queen of Charm confronts a host who's tired of being nice? Continue watching, because what happens next leaves the studio shaken, the internet on fire, and Julia Roberts wondering if she'll ever come back to late-night TV again. That one interview with his writers had put Jimmy Kimmel on a rabbit hole. He spent hours reading stories, not the usual late-night shallowness, but the seedy, scandalous fringes of Julia Roberts' career. He wasn't searching for warmth or whimsy. He was searching for drama, co-star rumors of feuds, headlines in tabloids about her love life, diva antics on set accused of, all game tonight in Jimmy's head. He wasn't hosting a guest. He was staging an encounter, and Julia Roberts was walking in without a clue. Backstage, Julia smoothed her tasteful black evening gown, having no idea an ambush was in the works. From offstage, she heard Jimmy finishing his monologue. His audience laughed on cue, routine political jokes and late-night sarcasm. Then his voice changed. Our next guest is someone you all know and love, Jimmy said suavely. But Sarah, Julia's publicist, heard something, a mere edge. She's been making us laugh and cry in films for more than 30 years. And now she's returned with a romantic comedy that'll make you believe in love again, even if some of us have given up entirely on that fairy tale. The audience laughed, but Sarah's smile wilted. Something didn't feel right. Please welcome the incomparable Julia Roberts. The band exploded. Julia emerged from behind the curtain in her signature style and blinding smile. The crowd erupted with applause, flashes of cameras popping like firecrackers. She was stunning under the bright lights, all the movie star America loved. Jimmy had risen to meet her, arms wide. The embrace was correct, friendly. But Julia sensed it. The tension. His posture was strained, his smile a fraction of an inch shy of his eyes. She recognized that expression. Something was amiss. "Thank you for inviting me, Jimmy," she replied as they both got seated. "This crowd is always so sweet." "We're delighted to have you," Jimmy said. But there was a look in his eye the cameras failed to record. Something hungry. He inclined forward with a smile that seemed more of a challenge than a welcome. "You know, Julia, I was just thinking. You've been doing this for 3 decades. 30 years of movies, of public life, of relationships, and probably a few, let's call them, learning experiences?" Her smile faltered. Just a fraction. That was not the warm, predictable opening she'd anticipated. No mention of her movie, no family anecdotes, just tension. But Julia Roberts was a pro. She adjusted in real time. "Well, I've been fortunate," she said calmly. "I've had the chance to work with incredible people and tell stories that matter to audiences." Jimmy leaned back, folding his arms like he was settling in for something deeper. "Sure, connecting with audiences," he said. "But what about connecting with your co-stars? Because there have been, let's say, interesting stories over the years about what it's really like working with Julia Roberts." The air in the studio changed. The laughter stopped. Even the band appeared to freeze. The crowd glanced around, not sure whether this was a radical bit or something different altogether. Backstage, Sarah felt her stomach plummet. This was not merely off-script. This was perilous. What came next would leave the crowd agog and Julia wondering if she'd ever again sit in that chair. You'll never guess how she reacted to what followed. "I'm not really sure what you're saying, Jimmy," Julia replied, her tone still courteous, but now laced with noticeable tension. Jimmy laughed, but the laughter in it was forced. "Come on, Julia," he said, attempting to brush it off. "We're all adults here. We've all heard the rumors, the diva tantrums, the so-called difficult attitude on set, the drama with your leading actors." Julia's smile dropped completely. Her eyes rested intently on Jimmy's. "I believe there is a misunderstanding," she said in a cold, calm tone. "This isn't the type of interview I was invited to conduct." Jimmy leaned forward, pretending to be innocent. "What type of interview do you think this is? This is where we speak as human beings. No spin, no PR-approved dialogue. Isn't this what real television is all about?" The audience wasn't laughing anymore. The room had gone still. Even the band had stopped responding. Off stage, Sarah was signaling down a producer, panic flashing across her face. "Real television?" Julia repeated, her voice measured but with a knife's edge. "Jimmy, let me be clear. Spreading rumors and rehashed trash can't be called journalism. It's not even entertainment. It's cruelty masquerading as candor." Jimmy laughed this time, but it wasn't reassuring. It was derisive. "Julia," he stated, his eyes glinting, "you're one of the most influential women in Hollywood. You've won Academy Awards. You've accumulated a fortune. Surely you can stand up to a few difficult questions." Julia straightened herself, her voice becoming stern. "There's a difference between tough questions and ambush tactics. If this is your idea of journalism, then I'd hate to see your idea of integrity." Tension wrapped around the studio like a storm cloud. Camera operators glanced toward the control room. The audience shifted in their seats, exchanging uneasy looks. This wasn't the interview they had come to see. Jimmy spread his hands as if to appear reasonable. "I'm merely speaking the words no one else dares to say. These are the questions your crew always ensure you never have to respond to. Don't you think your audience deserves the truth?" Julia's voice increased, controlled, but no longer tranquil. "You want the truth, Jimmy? I had come here to present my work, to entertain your audience, to be a guest on your program. The truth is, what you're doing isn't brave. It's ambush journalism at its worst." "Ambush journalism?" Jimmy echoed, his tone mocking. "That's rich, coming from someone who spent 30 years carefully shaping every public narrative about herself." That was the moment. Julia stood up. A loud gasp echoed through the audience. Viewers watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just a heated moment. It was history in the making. America's sweetheart, Julia Roberts, walked off live TV. "You know what, Jimmy? she declared, her voice firm and unshakable. I don't have to sit here and be ambushed in the name of candor. This is not an interview. It's a hatchet job, and I'm not going to be a part of it. Jimmy's eyes flashed. This, this was precisely the pandemonium he'd wanted. A viral moment. Headlines. Clips viewed millions of times. He grinned like a man who'd gotten his wish. Oh, so. This is the real Julia Robert, he said with a smirk. The one who walks away when she doesn't get what she wants. Julia hesitated, turned around to face him. Her tone pierced the silence. You want the real Julia Roberts? She asked. Let's discuss real. Let's discuss a host who must ambush his guests because he's too afraid or too lazy to be funny anymore. The studio was at a standstill. There were producers whispering into headsets. There was Sarah with her hands covering her mouth. No one budged. Julia did not wait for an answer. She gave the crowd a final, apologetic, proud look and strode off stage. And that was it. Late-night TV was never the same. Talk about someone who gets tough for fun and doesn't know the difference, Julia said, her tone venomous and unyielding. The room fell silent. Gaps of shock passed through the crowd. Some mouths were covered. Others were exchanged, shocked at what would happen next. Even Jimmy's bandleader glanced toward the control booth, eyes wide, waiting for someone, anyone, to stop it. But Jimmy? He was enjoying himself. He slapped his hands together, his eyes shining. Now this is a real conversation, he said, smiling. See how much more interesting this is than hearing the same story about your movie for the 100th time? Julia glared at him, almost disbelieving. Interesting, she repeated. Jimmy, this isn't interesting. It's pathetic. You're a grown man who built a career making people laugh, and now you're trying to humiliate someone who came on your show as a favor. Jimmy leaned forward. A favor? He said, scoffing. Julia, let's not kid ourselves. You're here to sell a movie. This isn't charity. You're right, she replied, her tone dropping to a cold calm that cut sharper than anger. I am here to sell a movie, undefined a movie that provided work for hundreds of individuals, undefined a movie that could perhaps make a family laugh together, undefined, that could perhaps bring someone happiness who's had a tough week, undefined. That's what I'm doing. She stopped, undefined, then gave the line that caused the room to shake. What are you doing? Undefined, ripping people apart for entertainment? Undefined. Jimmy's arrogant expression for the first time flickered. Undefined. His stance tightened up. I'm trying to have real conversations, he said, attempting to bypass all the scripted PR. Honest, undefined, Julia questioned, raising an eyebrow. Undefined. Jimmy, there is nothing honest about what you're doing. Undefined, you're using gossip as a weapon behind the guise of journalism. Undefined, and when you get called out, you pretend like they are the issue. I'm not bullying anyone, Jimmy pushed back, his tone now defensive. Undefined. I'm just asking questions. Questions? Undefined, Julia said, her tone flashing up. You asked me not one question about my job, about what it took to make this movie, about how I work. You went straight to the tabloids. That ain't journalism, Jimmy. That's Jerry Springer. The insult stung him like a slap. His face set. For the first time tonight, the arrogance dissolved into something harder. Genuine anger. His jaw tightened. That's not fair, he grunted. I'm attempting to pierce the bogus celebrity culture that renders these interviews hollow. Bogus? Julia, her head shook. You wish to know what's real, Jimmy? Real is showing people basic decency. Real is asking intelligent questions. You know what's sanitized? Concealing your own bitterness with smugness? Camouflaging your insecurity with cruelty? Jimmy blinked. My insecurity? He repeated. His voice broke just a little. I am referring to a man who is so desperate to remain current, Julia went on, that he's lost sight of how to be a human being who has exchanged humanity for combativeness and believes that a viral moment is worth more than integrity. The crowd was whispering now. Some had begun getting out their phones. They recognized that they were seeing something special, something not pre-written, something not cable fluff, late night, something authentic. Jimmy's producers had materialized now, mouthing into headsets, their eyes flicking back and forth between one another. Nobody had anticipated this. Nobody had practiced it, and nobody could do anything about it. You don't know anything about me, Jimmy spat, his mask at last crumbling. Julia met his eyes, her voice firm. I know enough. The crowd shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I know that 20 years ago you would have been proud to have me on your program, she told him. I know that then you knew the difference between being funny and being cruel. And I know that somewhere along the way, you forgot what made people actually like you. Jimmy got his back up. People still like me. Julia shrugged. Do they? Or are they just watching to see who you're going to attack next? A silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. Because there's a difference, Jimmy, she said, between being loved and being feared, between people laughing with you and people laughing at the pain of your victims. Jimmy stood up from behind his desk now, face flushed, voice sharp. You think you're better than me? You think you're better than criticism? I think I'm better than cruelty, Julia answered, dressed up as entertainment. I think I'm better than allowing a person to use me like a punching bag for their unresolved issues. My issues? He snapped. What issues? Julia didn't blink. The issue of a man who's out of new ideas. The issue of a host who's substituted creativity with controversy. The problem of a person who's lost sight of his actual work is to make people feel good, not to make people feel small. Jimmy laughed. Making people feel good? That's not journalism. That's cheerleading. This isn't journalism, Jimmy, Julia said sternly. This is a late-night talk show. Your role is to entertain, to make people smile a little and forget about the disorder of the world, to make them smile before they go to sleep. She looked around the room. But instead, you're creating chaos just for clicks. You're not building anything. You're burning things down. There's nothing wrong with drama, Jimmy shot back. Drama makes good television. No, Jimmy, she said, and her voice softened. Not with weakness, but with clarity. Heart makes good television. Authenticity makes good television. Kindness is good television. With the silence hanging between them, she said, what you're doing isn't drama. It's exploitation. The single word was like a stone in water. Jimmy moved a step closer, his jaw clenched. Exploitation, he echoed. You're accusing me of being an exploiter? I'm accusing what you're doing of being exploitation, Julia said serenely. You use people's vulnerability, their trust, their willingness to be open, and you distort it. You employ it in order to elicit a reaction, not to establish an actual moment. Jimmy laughed harshly. You want to discuss professionalism? Let's discuss the way you treat people. Your assistants, the crew. What about the rumors of you screaming at staff on set? Julia's eyes grew cold. There you go again, parroting rumor, not communicating with me, not questioning, attacking. Jimmy threw up his hands. Being true doesn't make it not gossip. It is gossip, Julia replied, her tone icy and razor-cut. If you can't substantiate it, if it originates in whispers and darkness, if it's only being spoken to hurt, not to know. I am trying to know, Jimmy replied, his tone raw now. How does a person get to be so beloved by audiences and yet have all these rumors about being difficult? Julia leaned forward. Want to know me? The air was waiting for her response. Ask me questions about my work. Ask what motivates me. Ask what it feels like to spend 30 years telling stories that touch people. Ask what I've learned, how I've changed, what I'm proud of. That's how you know people. Julia remained unmoved. Perhaps they do, she whispered. Perhaps a lot of interviews are memorized. But why? Jimmy didn't respond. Because people are scared, she went on. Scared of being misquoted. Scared of some offhand remark being turned into a headline. Scared of being in that chair and becoming a target rather than a guest. The quiet was denser now. Not uncomfortable. Thoughtful. You tell you want honesty, Julia said. Then make a space where individuals feel free to be honest. You can't yell a person into vulnerability, Jimmy. You have to earn it. Jimmy let out a slow breath, as if the wind had been taken out of him. His eyes fell for the first time that evening. I didn't expect it to happen like this, he acknowledged, his voice barely above a whisper. Neither did I, Julia replied. But here we are. He glanced up at her. I just, I thought if we pushed things, really pushed, people would pay attention. They will, Julia said, but not the way you want. Not in a way that makes them trust you. Jimmy took a trembling step backward toward his desk. I guess I forgot how to talk to people without a punchline. Julia's expression softened. Then maybe it's time you remembered. The audience was utterly silent, many of them obviously shaken. No laugh, no clapping. Only a room of people who suddenly saw something they didn't know they were looking for on late-night television. Truth. Jimmy looked at the camera. He paused, then leaned over and killed the feed. No music, no credits. Just a sudden fade to black. And in its place, Julia went on, her tone firm but filled with something beneath. You use that trust as a weapon. Jimmy scanned his hands, finding himself suddenly uncertain what to do with them. It didn't used to feel this way, he grumbled. When I first began, I simply wanted to be funny. I wanted people to laugh. And they did laugh, Jimmy, Julia replied softly. They adored you because you were smart, not sadistic, because you were kind, human. But now it's as though you believe people will only listen if you hurt someone first. Jimmy paused and let the quiet hang for a moment. Then he looked up. I guess I've been pursuing relevance, he said. The internet, the clips, the outrage. It's like that's the only way to be relevant anymore. Julia's face relaxed, not with forgiveness, but comprehension. You matter when you're honest. You are important when you are good. You are important when you make people feel seen, not when you make them spectacles. The crowd, which had been so quiet all along, was now leaning forward. No laughter, no gas. Just watching two people strip away layers of ego and pain. Jimmy nodded slowly. I screwed up. Julia stopped. You did. Jimmy turned to the camera, his voice unusually quiet. We'll be right back. But instead of cutting to commercial, the screen lingered, just long enough for the viewers at home to feel it too. That something rare had just happened, and that maybe undefined late-night TV would never be quite the same again. That's the thing about having a platform. It's not just an opportunity, undefined, it's a responsibility. I know that, Jimmy said. Do you? Julia asked. Because tonight, you don't seem like you do. Tonight, you seem to have forgotten that your platform is to bring happiness, not cause hurt. For an eternity, Jimmy didn't respond. Undefined, he looked at his hands, speaking almost in a whisper. What do you want me to say? Julia didn't wait. I want you to consider why you actually brought me here this evening. I want you to ask yourself if this is the type of television you're proud of. And above all, I want you to ask yourself, is this how you want to be remembered? Jimmy spoke the words softly, as if a man were listening to his own conscience aloud. How I want to be remembered. You could be remembered, Julia said, as a person who made people laugh when they needed it most, as someone who celebrated talent, creativity, and humanity, undefined, but right now, you're opting to be remembered as someone who used their platform to hurt people. Something changed in Jimmy's gaze. For the first time all night, no arrogance, no theatrics, just remorse. I messed up. You did, Julia said matter-of-factly. The only question now is, what are you going to do about it? Jimmy gradually shifted his attention back toward the studio. Faces still stiff, atmosphere still heavy with unease. The devastation of what could have been a light-hearted night. I think, he said slowly, I think we should conclude this interview. I think you're right, Julia said, standing and taking off her mic. As she felt her way off the set, she turned back and said, Jimmy, I hope you realize what kind of host you actually want to be, because this isn't it. The crowd cheered, not loudly but encouragingly, as she waved farewell. And Jimmy just sat there, silent, small, staring at the floor. The camera stayed on him for a moment longer, a man who had finally realized he burned down the house and no one was laughing. We'll be right back, he said weakly. The screen cut to commercial, and everyone watching knew. This moment would follow him forever. That is the story of how Julia Roberts walked off Jimmy Kimmel's show After one of the most dramatic and memorable interviews in late-night TV history, what do you think Jimmy could have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more impactful moments like this.